So in order to get our Photoshop file to animate like this, the first thing we're going to need to do is make sure that our files are organized and that you have all of your scans, um, your individual layers, scanned and numbered according to the progression in which they walk. And you want to be a little bit careful here because it's possible to walk them in the apps in the opposite direction. So once you have them in the Finder, take a look and sort of scroll down and see, okay, are they actually walking forward or are they walking backward? Because I think I had a little bit of a problem with this and actually ended up getting them walking in reverse. That being said, if that does happen, there is a solution in Photoshop. So let me go ahead and close out of this one and show you what it's like to bring this in fresh. So I have all of my files here saved, 1 through 8 for now. I go to Photoshop and I'm going to go to File, Scripts. Oh dear, this is again a little bit too low for you to see, but File, Scripts, and then scroll down a little bit past here and it's going to say Load Files into Stack. So File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack. Yes, I don't know why it doesn't say Load Files into Layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and browse for the files that I want, and I have everything set up here. I've got my time folder inside there. For me, I have my year, I have my project, then I have my walk cycle, and then my individual layers. So you want to keep having subfolders to keep everything organized. And then here I have my, if you saved your files as JPEGs, that's okay. But even better is TIFFs. The main difference is that JPEGs, the more you open and close them, they lose a little bit of quality. TIFFs take up a little more file space, but they are ultimately more hardy, more durable, and get less damage to them over time. So I'm going to select the first one. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select the last one, and then I'm going to go ahead and say Open. And just double check that everything's there. So you should have a 1 through 8, unless you got overly zealous and did the tweens, the in-betweens, for a total of 16, which we'll do eventually. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Then in Photoshop, you want to take a look at your Layers palette. If you don't have it open, go to Windows Layers and open it up and stretch it out nice and long so that you can see all of your layers. You can see here now, because I nicely numbered this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And don't worry about the fact that your figure is not cropped yet. I want you to first scan it, then bring it into Photoshop, then crop it, and then you can apply levels or contrast to it. So in order to see where I want to crop, because if I were to select an area just for this figure, it's possible that in one of the other layers that this leg advances and I don't want to accidentally cut it off. So I'm going to select my first layer, hold down Shift, select my last layer, and then come up to here, which is my layers adjustments, and basically it just says normal, and I'm going to scroll down to multiply. That way I can see all of my layers simultaneously. I can zoom in a little bit if I need to. And then I'm going to use the rectangle marquee tool. It could be that you've got it selected currently on a circle or a line, but it is either right below the direct selection tool or right next to it. And then I'm going to click and drag over this whole area, leaving a little bit of white space around it. And then I'm going to go to Image and Crop. And yes, there is the crop tool, but this is if I know that I have a certain somewhat random area that I want to crop, I can use image crop and it will do the same thing. It just doesn't give me the darkened preview here. And it will crop all the layers simultaneously. Then with all these layers still selected, if they become unselected, I'm going to shift click to select them again, and I'm going to put it back to normal. So now if you were to look at each layer, it will be cropped, but if you do it properly, then none of the feet or arms will be cropped off. Okay, once you have this done, then if your images, now my image, this image was already drawn in ink and there weren't any smudges or spots in the background. If you do have smudges or spots, you may need to look at your layers and then go to Image Adjustments, Levels, and see if you need to increase the contrast. Again, paying attention to that you don't increase the gaps in the silhouette line so much so that it's going to be hard to make a selection later on. But if you control primarily the whites, the blacks, and the midtones, you'll get enough contrast and you can get rid of whatever smudges there are on the outside. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is bring our images into the timeline down here. So to open up the timeline, you go to Windows, Timeline, and I've already got mine open, but I'll close it and reopen it. Okay. Then in the timeline, you have a few different tabs. You want the Timeline tab. You have a little drop down here. It sometimes defaults to create video timeline. You want to go to create frame timeline. You can select the first frame, and I'm just going to scooch the layers palette up a little bit. And then this is the drop down for the timeline palette. And if you look here, you have an option. Oh, sorry. First I select my first frame, and then I actually click on the frame timeline. Now, I only have one frame, and we want to show all 8. So that's when I go to this drop down, and I say I choose Make Frames from Layers. Now that adds in all 8 of my layers. And if you either hit the play button or the space bar, you'll see your figure start to walk. You click the space bar over and over again, it'll keep walking. Now, if you very quickly want to see what it looks like on a loop, you go down here to where it says Once, click on that and scroll down to Forever. I don't know if you can see that or not, but below Once there's 3 times and then there's Forever. Once you click Forever, then you click the space bar and your character will just walk and walk and walk and walk. Now one thing I notice here is my figure is walking backwards. So like I said, I was not sure if I had actually labeled these in the correct order. So you can, you should make note of this, and then for any future animations, make sure you do it in the correct order. There is a fairly simple way of fixing this in Photoshop. It may create some complication later in Premiere, so it's always good to, you know, maybe go back to the Finder and reverse these from 1 through 8 here. But in Photoshop, if I select my first animation and then shift select my last one and go to the drop down, I can then scroll up to reverse frames. Let me scooch this in a little bit more so I'm sure you can see this in the video. There's reverse frames. Okay, so don't be fooled by the fact that this still says 1 through 8. That's not referring to the layers, that's referring to the frame sequence. So I've still got this set on forever. I'm going to go ahead and hit the spacebar again, And now it looks more like she is walking forward. It can be a little bit difficult at first to tell the difference, but once you have a background in there, it will become very clear in terms of which way she's walking.